1863, the Gettysburg battlefield. There were two speakers that spoke. The first speaker rambled on for 2 hours. The second speaker spoke 283 words, delivering the Gettysburg Address. Now, of course, we know the second speaker was Abraham Lincoln. Does anyone out there in the audience know who the first speaker was? Well, the first speaker was then famed orator and former Secretary of State, Edward Everett. Who do you think was the most interesting? Earl Nightingale, one of my mentors, says that the only obligation of a speaker is to be interesting. So we're going to talk about interesting speeches today. I want to tell you a little story. I was at work the other day, and a colleague of mine was giving a presentation, a technical presentation of about 10 slides. And she starts the presentation, a presentation that should have taken 20 minutes. 1 hour later, we were kicked out of the room while she was still giving the presentation because someone else had booked it after us. What was the problem? Too much detail. Too much detail bores audiences, ladies and gentlemen. Too many details also distract the audience from your main points. Now, I'm an old Toastmaster, and one of the things we were told is whether it's a 3-minute speech, a 10-minute speech, or a 1-hour speech, you have 3 main points. So there were too many details in her speaking. There were also a byproduct of that, a detrimental byproduct, is that unnecessary detail spawns unnecessary questions that takes you in areas that you did not want your speech to go. So give the audience the bare minimum they need to get your point. We have a saying in the speaking world: be bold, be brief, and be gone. Say what you have to say and sit down. So give the audience the minimum they need. Tell stories. We've heard it today. Other speakers telling stories. People love stories. Everyone has stories to tell also. Now, as an engineer, we're used to working with numbers, computers, so on and so forth, and we don't have to deal with stories a whole lot. Think about the past week. You've heard stories around the office. Some of those stories may be relevant to what you're speaking on. You can use those stories. But the key is that the story must be relevant to the point you are making, not just your speech, but the point you are making at that time in your speech. And the third part is to vary presentation method. You may or may not know that adults have an attention span of about 20 minutes. So what does that tell you? After 20 minutes, change something. Maybe ask the audience questions or show a video that, of course, is relevant to your point at the time, or possibly pass around a prop relevant to your subject area. I've been at many different briefings and presentations that I've attended that they've passed around circuit boards or something that has a pertinence to this subject area. So vary your presentation. That makes a big difference. So the 3 things we want to practice now in our presentations: number 1, give your audience the minimum they need to get the point across that you want them to get. Tell stories. Everyone loves a story. And not only that, everyone wants to hear the end of the story, so they'll stick around. And finally, vary your presentation method. Ask the audience questions or show videos or pass a prop around. Who wants to be boring? No one in this audience wants to be boring. The next presentation, if you use these 3 tips, you will hear things like, now that was a great presentation.